Good evening from Baghdad. One of the world's oldest cities has become one of the world's newest power centers. As soon as major hostilities broke out between the two oil producers, Iraq and Iran, we came here to Baghdad to watch OPEC at war, to look in particular at a regime seeking supremacy in the Gulf, and at its remarkable president, Saddam Hussein, one of the least known but most effective rulers in the Middle East. As the conflict between his country and Iran got underway earlier this year, it was Saddam Hussein who declared, "Whoever climbs over our fence, we shall climb over his roof." Deep in Iranian territory, Iraqi armor chalks up fresh successes on the battlefield. For once, an Arab army is inflicting territorial loss on the enemy. The enmity here between Arab and Persian, as old as that between Arab and Jew. A border war that started months ago with fretful skirmishes. A war that no one now seems able to stop. A war that still threatens the world. Iranian resistance crumbled in the early days to the advancing Iraqis. There are signs now that they might not be having it all their own way, but in this sector at least, the Iraqis are jubilant. Hauling up the Iraqi flag over Iranian government buildings, bringing with them propaganda posters of President Saddam Hussein, and posing for ironic group photographs with the old imperial lion of Iran. On the road back from the front, the spoils of war. Captured Iranian tanks, American M60s, being hauled back to Baghdad for the big victory parade. A victory parade that may now have to wait a while. The Iranians are showing some signs of resistance. Resistance on the battlefield, but above all resistance to the very idea of a ceasefire. A dawn raid by Iranian jets, signaling that Iraq does not have it all its own way in this war. The target is the big refinery on the outskirts of Baghdad. This has become an economic war, but even in this sort of warfare, civilians get hurt. Almost 100 killed in the past week. But the raids bring only temporary terror to Baghdad. Otherwise, it seems a city peculiarly content to be at war, at least while its own side is winning. Only the foreigners have fled, thousands of them drawn to Iraq for the money, now deciding that a shooting war is no part of the deal. And then there's the chance to join in the war games. To cake your bus with mud so that a telltale glint from burnished metal doesn't betray your position to Iranian warplanes, even if the nearest you get to the front is a city bus stop. Baghdad seems positively to revel in the war. It's almost as if war is a natural state in the bazaars of Baghdad. Certainly the inconvenience of this conflict has so far proved minimal. There's no petrol shortage and the price is fixed at an envy-making 14 pence a gallon. So vast are their reserves that Iraqis say that the last 2 barrels of oil in the world will be theirs. A world away from the rigid orthodoxy of the Ayatollahs in Iran, a generation of modern Baghdad women shun the veil. Strolling unconcernedly in city streets in Western clothes, there's a way of life to be defended as well as a country and a regime against the incursions of Iran's puritanical revolution. And so far, the defense of those modern ideals has proceeded well. Relations between Iran and Iraq worsened when the Ayatollahs took over. The Iraqis claimed that the Iranians were refusing to implement border agreements, and the first skirmishes broke out. In the first big incursion, Iraqi tanks rolled into Zain al-Qaus on September the 7th. 2 days later, they occupied the border village of Saif Saad. On September the 17th, the Iraqi army captured a group of border posts in the south, and then the war began in earnest. At the beginning of last week, Iraqi MiGs bombed 10 Iranian airfields. The next day, the Iranians hit back, and 3 British workers became the first foreign victims of the war. The first major territorial gain came last Wednesday, when Iraq claimed the capture of the town of Qasr Shireen in the north. Qasr Shireen was the first Iranian town of any consequence to fall to the Iraqis, and our visit here today is the first independent confirmation of its fall. The Iraqis say they have no long-term intentions to occupy Qasr Shireen. They'll use it, they say, to force other concessions out of the Iranians. As the Iraqi grip tightens on the town, a few hundred bemused residents adjust to a new and frightening military presence, mainly the old and the infirm who couldn't manage to escape the war. Many thousands left before Qasr Shireen fell, but the Iraqis say that some are trickling back. They come back to a world that's been turned upside down. Before they left, loyalty was expected and demanded by the fanatical revolutionaries who followed the Ayatollah Khomeini. Now, the Islamic Revolution has been replaced by the ruthless Arab socialism of President Saddam Hussein. Destruction in the area was limited to the local Iranian radio and TV station, not destroyed in the fighting, but deliberately demolished afterwards by Iraqi engineers. They blew it up, they say, as a penalty for the anti-Iraq propaganda it had been transmitting across the frontier. A senior tank officer explains Iraq's intention in the sector.
But why we advanced, if you ask me why we advanced to this distance inside Iran, we advanced to this distance to force Iran to recognize that Zain al-Qaws, Saif Saad and Shatt al-Arab is Iraqi according to the laws, according to the rules, according to the international behavior.
But you will be holding on to this Qasr Shireen sector until the Iranians acknowledge that Zain al-Qaws and the others are yours.
That is right. We don't want Qasr Shireen. It is Iranian. We are just coming here to force them to recognize that and to be reasonable enough to see that they cannot do it and they cannot have it there all the time.
Iraq's next major gain was the border town of Mehran, but an Iranian counterattack now puts that in doubt. Then the fighting switched to the vital Shatt al-Arab in the south. The Iraqis crossed the waterway and besieged the port of Khorramshahr. They advanced too on Ahwaz, capital of the Iranian oil province of Khuzestan. And in further fighting, the Iraqis are pressing on the communications links from Tehran to the oil fields. With anxiety over oil supplies mounting, I spoke to Iraq's Foreign Minister, Dr. Sadoun Hamadi. In this exclusive interview, I first asked him about Iraq's demands.
Our position is this. There is an international border between us and Iran, well recognized and defined in 1914, 1913, 1914. There are more than 250 landmarks which have been done mutually in 1975. There are maps, official maps, signed and agreed by both of us. Now, what falls on our side of these lands should be ours. What falls on the other side, it is theirs. All we want is that they recognize officially that these lands are Iraqi lands on the land frontier. Second, Shatt al-Arab is definitely and absolutely an Iraqi river. We accept no Talwik or any other. It has been always, since the dawn of history, an Iraqi river. Third, we would like to see that Iran makes pledge, an agreement, workable agreement, that they would not interfere in our internal affairs in any way, and that security and peace is maintained on our border. Now, if these are recognized with goodwill by Iran, we will not stay in any territory, Iranian territory.
But the real question is surely this. By the agreement of 1913, the Iraqi border is on the right bank of the Shatt al-Arab. The Iraqi army now is in occupation of a great deal of territory on the right bank. Are you prepared to withdraw to the western bank?
I told you what we want from Iran. If they are ready to guarantee these points which I mentioned, we have no claim or no ambition in any Iranian territory at all. We have just said that, definitely.
So the Iraqi army will withdraw from the east bank of the Shatt al-Arab?
Certainly.
Do you foresee the Iranians in their present state and in their present mood agreeing to any of that?
Well, I really can't speak for them. But from our experience, what we see in Iran is almost a lack of a government. We can't see a government that really looks after the real interest of the country, a government that's responsible, that can speak sense. At any rate, I know what you mean. It is very difficult to come to understanding with the present regime in Iran, but this is up to them. This is up to them. If they would like to establish peace, we are ready. If not, they bear the consequences.
And the consequences are what?
Well, we have to do something to make them to come to sense. We tried peacefully, we were unsuccessful. We have to do it this way, and they have to come to sense. All what we ask is what I told you.
Would you like to see the Iranian regime overthrown?
That's up to them. We don't interfere in their internal affairs. If the Iranian people would like this regime, it's okay. If they don't, it's okay. It is none of our policy really to overthrow or change a regime in Iran. We are an unallied country. But if you ask me what is this regime is doing, I think it's ruining Iran. This regime is leading Iran to a catastrophe.
And was it not a likely and perhaps planned effect of the war, from your point of view, that it might encourage the Iranians to remove that regime?
The Iranian regime was in chaos much before that. This is just an outcome, not a cause.
Minister, we are now in the second week of major hostilities between your country and Iran. What do you feel at the moment are the prospects for a ceasefire?
Well, from what I hear in the news, the Iranians are still are not accepting a ceasefire, but I think eventually they have to accept it. I don't know when. It all depends on them.
Ceasefire or surrender?
I can't say that it is a ceasefire or a surrender, but I'm saying is that we are ready to talk and negotiate with the Iranians if they are ready to accept the points which I mentioned.
But they have to accept those conditions in advance of any ceasefire.
Those are not conditions. They would be conditions if we are asking a territory, an Iranian territory. It is not a condition. All we are saying is that they should recognize our legal frontiers, that the lands which are Iraqi lands should go back to Iraq. Is that a condition? That's not a condition. That's absolutely our right and our to preserve the territorial integrity of our country.
So put another way, they have to acknowledge your rights
Yes.
before there's a ceasefire.
Absolutely.
And if they don't acknowledge those rights, how long can Iraq continue prosecuting this war?
We have all the ability to go on. I don't think they have the same ability to go on as we are.
The face of the man who took the Iraqi people to war gazes out from posters all over Baghdad. Saddam Hussein al-Takriti, president in name for the past 14 months, but Iraq's strongman for the past decade. Variously attired in bespoke lounge suit, or as popular hero in Arab headdress, or in the uniform of a field marshal, although he was never a soldier, sometimes depicted as the sweaty labourer with shovel to hand, but his favourite image, the cuddly father figure. The war with Iran has given Iraq a rare opportunity to brush up a pretty tarnished image. A week ago, the government commandeered all 550 beds in this hotel, the largest and the most modern in Baghdad, and then proceeded to fill them with the international press. As the Iraqis see it, the international press can help confer a new status as well as a new image on their country. But that does not mean the foreign press is free in its operations in Iraq. Television teams are tightly monitored in all they film and go to the front only on officially escorted bus tours. The press has now been ordered out of the Shatt al-Arab area altogether, a firm enough indication that the war in the south is not going too well. If it drags on, there could be more pressure on outsiders to intervene. I asked the Iraqi foreign minister what he had to say to the big powers.
There is one thing that we would like to say to the big powers. That is not to interfere in the area in any way, to keep away. Not to interfere directly or indirectly. This has been always what we wanted from the big powers.
Are you confident that Iraq and the smaller Arab countries in the Gulf will be able, though, to maintain security for what are, after all, vital interests, vital economic interests for the West?
Yes, definitely. After all, who is threatening our independence? If it is a country in the region, we should be able to deal with that. But if it is a big power coming and interfering in the area, then the other big power would use that as a pretext for its own interference, and we get in the vicious circle.
There were those, of course, who saw the vicious circle beginning with the Soviet intervention in Afghanistan, that this was a move that in many ways, it was suggested, directly threatened the Gulf. Now, what's your view of that?
The interference, the military interference of the Soviet Union in Afghanistan was a move which we had a position of. We said our position, we stated our position.
You were opposed to it?
Yes. But we also said that it should not be used as a pretext for an American interference in the area. It should not be used as a cover for a military coming back by the United States in the area. Apparently, the United States is not listening. They are spending efforts to come back in sort of naval and military facilities in Oman and Somalia. We believe that would, instead of coping with the situation, that would only aggravate the situation.
With the collapse of Iran as a military power, don't you foresee Iraq playing a larger role in the security of this region?
We are not involved in the security of regions in the way people speak about in the Western press. We have security responsibilities for the Arab countries. I don't know what do you mean by the region. Iran is responsible for its own security. Every country is responsible for its own national security. If there is any collective security which Iraq is a part of, that's the Arab collective security. Otherwise, I really don't know what is meant by regional security.
Well, we're obviously referring to the Gulf, and your plans to expand the Iraqi Navy, for instance, surely suggest a rather larger role within the Gulf waters, within...
To protect our independence, to protect the independence of the Arab homeland, so that we would not have a second case of the 3 islands. You know, the Shah just came and occupied the 3 islands. No one could do anything. It's part of our homeland. He just occupied that. We don't like to have such a situation repeated again.
So you are saying, then, Minister, that there has been a decisive shift in the balance of power in this area. If you have no intention of ever letting that sort of thing happen again?
We would like to protect the independence of Iraq. Any other Arab country on the Arabian Gulf if its independence is threatened and we are asked to assist, we will assist. We feel that is our responsibility. That's the only responsibility we have in the area.
That you would come to the aid of any smaller Arab country in the Gulf, for instance,
Yes.
whether it had a problem with, a military problem with Iran or any other country?
If it is an Arab country, no. A foreign country, yes.
And in this region, that is likely, surely, to be the Iranians principally, isn't it?
It has been for the last 500 years, the threat always came from Iran.